Hi everyone. Hopefully you guys already enjoy your lunch. Our first talk for this afternoon session will start in the next 2 minutes. So if you would like to join the first talk in the whole ones of FOSSASIA Summit 2025 Day 2, just have a seat and then we will start in the next 2 minutes. Thanks everyone. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our afternoon session of FOSSASIA Summit 2025 for the day 2. It's my honor to welcome all of you guys into our session today. So just want to have a quick introduction about myself. So I'm Wendy. I'm a software engineering. I'm also a volunteer for FOSSASIA in this year. It's my honor to be able to introduce with you guys the first talk for our afternoon session. So we will have the talk with the topic Unleash the Power of Collabora Online, a journey into seamless integration, cutting edge and features and automatic documents with our very special speaker today, Thomas. He is a senior software engineering at Collabora Productivity, and he will walk you through a fantastic topic he bringing to us today. So Thomas, are you ready? It's your day now.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay. Let's start. First, I will introduce who we are. Collabora Productivity is a friendly to open source project. We are 100% open source. We are using all the LibreOffice technologies, and all our stack is free and open source, and it's mostly runs the best if you are using Linux. Anybody can contribute and participate in our development. We have open commits and tickets, and all is publicly. We have like weekly community calls and a forum that a lot of people can participate in. Even now we have things like trainings that on weekly basis that go through a lot of development topics to make it easier for participants to gather knowledge. We are ISO certificate, we have sensitive license and office from developers from all around the free world. These are some of our partners and integrators, like many things. So integrators that are using Collabora Online. And these are some of our customers. So the next is then, what is Collabora Online? Collabora Online is like an open online editor for documents, spreadsheets, slides, drawings, and so on. We are like feature rich, and we have like also support viewing and editing, even collaborative editing of the documents. We have quite a big interoperability with Microsoft formats and also more esoteric formats that are already not used a lot. And of course, like the PDF and all the similar stuff. we have a powerful what you see, what you get rendering. So this is how each of our components are look like. This is like a document editor, spreadsheets, then the presentations and drawings. We also have this Collabora Office, which is based like on LibreOffice, so it's a desktop editor. But we also have like Collabora Office that is also for developed for the Android, iOS, and Chromebooks. As I said, we are the biggest contributor to LibreOffice development. We are the largest team of certified LibreOffice engineers. And we are like driving force between putting like LibreOffice in the cloud itself. Yes. So now I talk about scalability. Collabora Online, you can use it in the cloud, so it's made to be highly available and scalable. So you can have load balancing and HA proxy balancer to balance the load between viewing the documents. And then you have like Collabora Online worker nodes that are connected to the EFSS server using a WOPI-like interface, but like this is usually Nextcloud. For example, we are using like Docker and Kubernetes for this. But we also have our own piece there that is called cool controller. The problem is that with the usual development, you just have you can just have like a static system. You cannot scale properly, like added new pods or added new or on demand take it away, because if you have like for collaboration, the need is that every time you get to the document, you have to go to the same pod, and you can achieve this in a static way, but then you throw away a lot of scalability here. So this is why we implemented the cool controller here. The cool controller has like this root token that will make sure that the user always gets to the right document that he chooses for. So if you take away some pods here, you could get a problem if you just use the WOPI source for its way to search for the document. So with root token, we solve this problem. So with this, we get automatic scalability possible. And there are, let's say here, no, it's better here. So with this we can get that if there is some pods that are utilized more, that we can add automatically new pods and balance the load. This is why the cool controller has some functionality that can automatically migrate the documents to a new pod if this is necessary, or if there is no load on the server. For example, like in here, this is when pod is not utilized, then it will close the pods, and you will have less pods working on and save energy. We also have like a unified cluster overview inside cool controller, so you can get all the pod information here, which documents are open for the administrators to look in, and how many users there are for each pod. And this is nicely integrated into one place. So this the benefit is that this makes us highly available. You can have also multiple cool controllers. So if one cool controller would shut down or disappear, another can take a place of the and starts doing the job of the previous one. There are also health charts for the cool controller that can easily, like as in the previous show, what is going on in the cluster itself. So for security, in the Collabora Online, we are sending to the clients only the pixel data, so it's not any information that can use. So, for example, on the browser you get the pixels, and this we are optimizing for this. We are also working on PDF signing in the latest, so PDF signing can be done with your multiple providers, and they can be also verified in the Acrobat reader so that they are valid. There are some more other security changes. So we have rootless containers. We have like ODF, wholesome encryption, so that wholesome that the whole document itself is encrypted now, not just the parts inside the document. And then this one big topic is this automatic documents. This is when you can create a template document and put inside the forms, and with help of these, you can then create multiple documents from this template by providing JSON data in JSON form like this. As you can see here, like this is just you don't have any form data. Then you can with the JSON data you can add it, and you can have then it automatically input this inside the document metadata or also data that can then it will be changed inside the document. Something like yes, this you can see. We can also create from this automatic charts for the documents. And I think you can also extract some information from the documents, which you can change afterwards. So you can create docx documents, ODT, PDF documents from this, and that's fine. Next is autotext and custom dictionaries. So autotext is when you are inserting like FLU and press F3 inside LibreOffice. For example, the automatic the text will be inserted inside the document automatically. The problem here is that this is supported in LibreOffice, but in Collabora Online, it depends on the user. It needs to be user configurable. So we are implementing this, so you can add new inside, for example, Nextcloud. You can add your own documents and this automatic text databases. And then you can see like this, you can change it inside your custom dictionary and documents. So what else? The presentations. In the presentations we are working on. We can now use presenter console and done the present in Vino presentation completely new, so we can have presenter console, which has like timer function, and you can see what is the next previous notes, and all the slides, and then we added 3D transitions which are using WebGL. So it's a lot nicer viewing. Then we added also auto-align, so you can auto-align the objects inside presentations. Custom object interactions, where you can click on some object and it will do some action like previous and next. And a lot of optimizations, so it's faster. There is also support for add in comments, so it automatically adds. Then nested comments, added full width for the comments, style sidebar, continued operability, so the continued interoperability. We added new formulas for exchange and added PDF 2.0 support, and many other improvements there. Thanks and to our partner and the community for this. So we have our own cool days that we will have in Budapest from 2nd to the 4th June. So everybody is welcome here to participate in our conference. And thank you.
Thanks a lot for the sharing, Thomas. Are there any questions about Collabora Online or open source document editor in general? I believe like Thomas will be around in the upcoming day and today as well. So if you guys have any questions, just feel free to reach out into Thomas, and I believe he will really happy to continue the conversation with everyone. We will have the next talk in the next 1 minute. Everyone have a chance to like settle down, find a seat, and then we will start our next talk very soon. Thanks a lot, Thomas. All right. Hi, everyone. We will move into our next talk now. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Benjamin. He's gonna to give in the lighting talk about Beyond the App, extending software into the network with camera and network APIs. It will be a really interesting topic. Everyone, please give Ben a warm welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, my name is Benjamin Ernoff. I'm working with Vonage, and hopefully you'll learn something interesting in these next 5 minutes. So today we're going to talk about programmable networks, how the Camara standard is making it open and accessible, and how you can start playing with programmable networks and network APIs today with Vonage APIs. So let's start with a real-world use case, something everyone's probably a little bit familiar with. Fraud prevention. Each year, fraud costs the globe tens of billions of dollars, and it's only growing. In the last year, fraud increased by 15% around the world, and recently Stripe said that they've noticed a 40% uptick in transaction volumes ever since AI started going mainstream. And one of the big problems with fraud is that generally fraud protection happens after the fraud already occurs. So what if we could stop the problem before it starts? Ta-da! Programmable networks. So I'm working at Vonage, and we were recently acquired by Ericsson a couple years ago. So we're working with mobile network providers to launch programmable networks. What that means is you can get information from the network and information like when was the last time the SIM was swapped, where is the device, and making sure that that the device is actually where the user says they are. So in these ways, if we could get these pieces of information, we could confirm that your user is who they are and that we can let them go through your application because we know who they are. So I mentioned programmable networks, network APIs, 5G APIs. What does this all mean? Up until now, the networks have been kind of just like a pipe for data, right? It's getting the information from your application to the network, storing the information on the network, getting it back. But now with 4 and 5G networks, we can program those pipes. So we can actually get information from the data inside and then use it to change how your application works. So why do we care? Like as Judy Bloom said, are you there, God? It's me. Are you there, mobile network? It's me, a software developer. So some things you can do with this information is verify phone number much more securely. So you can confirm someone, authenticate your users without having to do annoying OTPs. You can create a minority report like feature where you can know where the users are, their location, and then update the functionality of your app based on where they are. Quality on demand. So if you have really critical application like technicians or telehealth where people are using a lot of bandwidth, AR, VR, you can boost their performance on the network. And then again, for fraud and authenticating, you can check things like, is the device roaming or is it where we expect it to be? And what makes this talk open source is Kamara. So this is a new standard in 5G APIs. So the Kamara project is it's the organization of all of the mobile networks, mobile providers around the world. They came together to create one common unified approach to the APIs. It's really good because it's standardized. We like that. It's open. You can go on the Kamara project, check the wiki, see all of the leadership team, and actually join the meetings every week on Fridays. And that's the good stuff. You can even see here the map. That's the roadmap of all the APIs in Thailand. They're available, and they're available around the world. What's the bad part about the Kamara project is that it's a big group of telecommunications providers that are coming together to design APIs. So you can join the meetings on Fridays if you would like to waste your Fridays talking telecommunications. And they're not really designing these APIs like developers, as you might imagine. So that's the beauty of Vonage Network APIs, is we're bringing the developer voice into the Kamara project. So we are really we have a history in APIs, we have the background, and so basically what we're doing is we're being kind of like the middleware. So you only have to design your applications once. We aggregate all of the telecom APIs into one endpoint for you, and we're enhancing the developer experience. So right now, a lot of these APIs are just starting to get launched, and one of the problems is that they're not really widely available in all the countries. So we're creating developer tools like we've created a virtual mobile operator so that you can play with all the APIs no matter where you are, no matter what where your applications are running. And we have a great team of documentarians and community support. And just want to say thank you. We're at the booth right there if you want to learn more about Kamara and network APIs. And we're also doing a fun game through WhatsApp. You can scan and get some free API credit. So that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ben. Are there any questions for Ben about the programmable network APIs? Are there any questions? Actually, in the Vonage booth over there, they have a lot of like cool sticker. You guys definitely need to go to check out, and definitely need to join the game in the QR code, because this will lead you guys into the Slack channel, right? And in that, you can like continue to navigate about like a lot of interesting content that Ben just like sharing today, and like connect with more people in the open source community, especially for Kamara and Vonage as well. Are there any questions? All right. Thank you a lot for the sharing today, Ben.
Thank you for no questions.
But I believe Ben will arouse in our summit today and like tomorrow as well. So feel free to reach out to him anytime, and I believe that he will really happy to answer all of your questions. We will have 5 minute break now before we move into the next talk. Thanks a lot, everyone. Hi, everyone. The next talk will start in the 5 p.m. It's been the next 10 minutes. So you guys feel free to just go around, have a break, and then enjoy some coffee before the next talk. All right, everyone, welcome back. It's my pleasure to introduce with you guys the next talk for our session today. So the next topic we will have 7 myths of business open source debunk. This is a really interesting topic. I really wonder what is the myth we usually to have. And it will be sharing by our speaker, Niels Manus. He is the senior cloud architect at Open Telecom. Everyone, please give Niels a warm welcome.
Yeah, welcome also from my side. I don't know how deeply involved you are in open source, but now and then you're probably talking with your colleagues, with your co-students, with some other developers, but also maybe with your parents or your grandparents or to some business partners about open source. And when in my work, I do this all the time. And I found out that I'm asked very often the same questions about some, well, kind of misunderstandings, or as I used to call it here, like a myth. So there are a number of narratives who are, for whatever reason, somehow apparently baked into the idea of open source and what is connected to that. And that's why I prepared this talk for today, for this conference, and maybe it is helpful also for you if you are in similar situations, so that you can use those as a guideline of how to deal with that questions. So my name is Niels Magnus. As you learned already, I'm working in Deutsche Telekom for the Open Telecom Cloud. The Open Telecom Cloud is a public cloud set up with my colleagues and my teams in Europe. And we use there lots of open source software to set this up and to run everything using OpenStack, for example, using a lot of other tools as well, and are also a little bit engaged into the further development of, say, OpenStack and so on. That is my background, and also, well, some of you may know me about my work as a journalist, as a tech consultant, as a organizer of conferences, and from time to time I also speak at conferences like today. Yeah, if we are talking about free software and open source, then there are a number of different perspectives available. So there is technology, there is philosophy, there is some kind of community involved, and there's also business. And all these 4 aspects are just different perspectives on the same thing. So if we look back here, well, I don't know, has anybody an idea who is the first person on my list here? Any idea? So that's Ken Thompson. Ken Thompson in a somewhat made over a picture here. He is basically the inventor of Unix. Unix as an operating system, as a concept. He created some very important and base layer things in this context. The middle one is probably easy to guess. That's Richard Stallman with his important contribution of the GNU movement and the free software license, the GPL, General Public License, and all this stuff. And the third one is also quite popular. Linus Torvalds is just a placeholder for many thousands of developers who started their own projects and released them under open source licenses. This is just a little bit the scope where we are talking about. So what these people created, and they are just a placeholder for, of course, many more. A very short disclaimer. There's always a discussion about open source and free software. I hope that most of you have read about the two terms. I use them nearly as synonyms, but I use most of the time here in this presentation the term open source. So this is no disrespect to you, Mr. Storman, so just for the sake of ease here. Then something else important to understand or to keep in mind is open source is not the same like Linux, and Linux is not the same like of open source. So I'd say Linux is a very good example and a very important part of open source, but obviously there are many other software components that are living outside the Linux world itself. Let's start right away. I said I'm talking about 7 myths. So one of the first myths is, and it's probably, at least my impression, the most often stated myth that open source is for free, and for free as it's meant in the description of free as in free beer. So you don't have to pay anything for it. But that's not true. There is no reason, if you read the GPL, for example, closely, there's no reason to ask for some money for specific things. For example, as to create the copies and so on, as long as, of course, the right requirements from the license, the licenses are fulfilled. So that is the important part. But there is no problem in asking money for that. Of course, that is what only few people actually do, or few businesses do, because there's another way that makes it way easier to generate some revenue with open source software, and that is, of course, creating some support and creating value-added things on top of that. And that is the one side, and the other side is that if you're running open source, you of course need the expertise to do so. And this expertise can be either built up by your employees, by your staff members, and so on. Or you could also ask expert consultancy companies or companies who are focused on doing that as well. That is the other alternative. But that all does not mean it is for free or is completely cost-free. However, it's always the big question on how to balance that. So, of course, you are saving the license costs. So that is one part. And you gain a lot of flexibility, and you can adapt your solutions and your IT infrastructure, your IT strategy much easier to the future in this way. That is, in my experience, way more important than the assigned resources in training, knowledge, and strategy. That means that you have to send your co-workers or employees to some trainings, to give them the time and the opportunity to read about new technology and to practice and to experiment with that. There are lots of smaller facets of this myth number one about the money or the course, but for the sake of time, I'd like to move on here a little bit. So maybe one extra thought about a business here from Andy Mulholland, from former CTO from Capgemini. He discussed the question, is open source the right solution for everybody? And he says, well, also from his specific perspective, no, it is not. And the discussion is often oversimplified. It's not about just does it fit on a technology level or not, but it's also important how to put this into context in your business context, just as a reminder. Also, very brief look here on IT costs. If you have any expenses in your IT department, then you should ask yourself if you have to spend one or another dollar, or in this case baht, on that, what will happen with this money? Is it going away or is it staying in your organization? And that is the big difference. If you pay year after year for the licensing to use some proprietary office package, for example, why not investing the same amount of money in setting up something like that with the many open source available alternatives, and then investing money into the training of your employees, investing money in the further development of these tools, and investing money into services and setups that keep this money in your own environment. So moving on a little bit, so time is scarce. Open source is less powerful is the second often mentioned myth. It's just a do-it-yourself solution for tech hackers, for enthusiasts, for whatever, and it's unreliable and unprofessional. So there's a German newspaper or a tech magazine, and they have also an online forum. And for a couple of years, whatever some subject about Linux or open source was mentioned over there, there was someone who thought he might be very funny, and he said each and every time again, so there is some issue with Linux, or there is some issue with some open source software, and with some real software that would never have been happening. So this is a completely silly argumentation, because if we just look at the examples, the counter examples, so Linux, Android, or open source software are used in finance applications, in cloud native. Kubernetes is based on open source and is open source. All of the top 500 HPC computers nowadays, since 2017, so that's more than 5 years now, are 100% running on Linux, and the same applies to more than 90% of all web servers and more than 80% of cloud VMs in the typical public clouds at the moment. So that is pretty easy to contradict here, that open source is no measurement of the quality or the non-quality of some software. Of course, you have to pick the right one, and sometimes the variety or the availability of several solutions can be a little bit overwhelming, but then get some professional support and they will support you here. And then there's also some concern here if it comes to some specific feature requests. It's of course possible with open source to let others support you in developing some extra features that might be specific for your company, for your business. But try, if you do something like that, to embed this in the larger community, because otherwise it will be, even if it's licensed as open source, becomes something like a proprietary solution for one specific use case, and that is then indeed complicated to deal with. A third myth, which is pretty quickly explained, a lot of people think about open source as something that you get for free or for at least a free license course and so on, and that means you have to give something back. And let me say this very clear, some giving back is a very good idea, because if we share something, we can enhance this, we get ourselves something back, and the whole community is by that much more sustainable. But it's not a requirement, it's not necessary to do that. So it's completely fine if you run some IT components, some IT setups just with open source software and pay nothing for that. And this is not in all the heads and minds from everybody all the time. So there is a choice. Pick the choice that you are looking for, and decide what you can do and what you want to do to further strengthen this community. A fourth myth, also pretty quickly summarized. Some companies think about open source is license free, so it's we can do with it whatever we want. We can take it, build it into our devices, and well, that's it. That's not true. So a license is a legal contract. A legal contract can be tried before court, and that has been done several times. So I've put here on a website of Harald Welte, who ran a number of successful cases against other software distributors or providers of specific solutions, like here the AVM Fritzbox or the Linksys VRT 54G, or sometimes in some, I think it was a smart TV or so by Westinghouse Digital, where they used BusyBox internally or so. So if you're using open source software, then you have to comply to the license and do the requirements that are in there, like providing the source code, providing also the modified source code. Myth number 5 is one of my favorite discussion about open source, because some say open source software is more insecure because its source it's open. Everybody can look into the source, and then this means that those attackers can very easily find some attacks against that. But actually it's the contrary. It's a requirement, in my opinion, or at least for all security systems that I designed. I designed them always in a way that even if the attacker has all the information how I protected my systems, even then he's not able to get into my setup. That is a very, very powerful thought, and it was more or less first time mentioned by August, I think was his name, August Kerkhoffs, a Dutch and a French cryptographer, if you want to say so, and he said that if you set up some crypto system, some encryption mechanism, but this can also be extended to any kind of security software, this is only as strong as the concept and not the non-knowledge about the concept itself. This is also known by the term security through obscurity. So if it's only hard to get into your systems because they are so difficult to use, that's not a good idea. And that means that we have the protection on the wrong places. And I give you some 2 short examples, or let's shorten it up for the first one. There was this XZ incident recently, last year. What did happen here? XZ is a part of some libraries, also some crypto functions in there. So it's a very crucial part of the Linux operating system at large. And what did happen here? Since it is developed in an open source manner, some external attacker, apparently from some state-organized organization, applied for membership in this Git community. He supported the project and made some useful changes and approaches to that. And after some time, 1 or 2 years, he gained some higher status over there and eventually gained committing rights to the repository and introduced a number of smaller backdoors to this component. That is very frightening to hear or to think about, but that is my major reply here. In case this would not have been open source software, but some proprietary closed software, then it would have been way more harder to detect this at all. Because if you just have a big binary blob, it's very difficult to find any of those issues at all. I have to speed up a little bit, even more. The questions about there is no support of open source, so this is developed by some personal enthusiasts and so on. This is very easily contradicted just by the numbers. So a vast majority, for example, for the vast majority of the kernel developers, for example, are just paid by huge companies like IBM, like SUSE, like Huawei is a big contributor to the kernel, and several other of the large companies are actually paying their employees to further on this kind of software. As I said, 75% of those kernel developers are working for those companies, and there have been a number of assessments of what is the actual value behind that. And for example, one approach was trying to estimate how much would it be to create something like the Linux kernel, which is a very important core piece in many setups nowadays, from scratch. And that was about $1.5 billion US dollars, and that was even a couple of years ago. A similar estimation came from the Open Infra Foundation. And well, here we just see who is all supporting and sponsoring and working with those tools as well. And here a last idea, open source is only for developers, for nerds, for Bash script typers, for C programmers. No, it's not. We have, of course, lots of UIs, we have graphical tools, as well as we have CLIs and so on. Just go around here on the conference exhibition and you see many of those examples. And with that, I just summarized here the 7 myths, and I hope this might be useful for you, maybe as a reminder of how to address those concerns or questions. And with that, I say thank you. I guess I'm a little bit over time already. I don't know if there are any questions. I guess.
Yes. This is a very interesting topic, so we may have the time for only one question, the very short ones. Anyone have any question for Niels now? All right. If you guys don't
Otherwise,
have any question.
I will be around all the time,
Yeah.
and just come up to me.
Yes, feel free to reach out to Neil if you see him around and like ask any questions or discuss more about 7 myths he just sharing. Thanks a lot for your time, Niels. We really appreciate that. Okay, hi everyone. For our next talk, we will have another interesting topic want to share with you guys. So the next talk will about scan code to reuse free and open source software safety with free and open source software. We will have our speaker for this talk will be Ayans. He is the first maintainer about code and he also about the maintainer of scan code, the leading free and open source software composition in analysis and license scanning tool. So Ayans, it's your time now. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So let's jump right into it. So this talk is about scanning code and reusing open source software more consciously, more safely, and how we can do that with more open source software and open standards. So just what we are going to discuss, a bit of introductions, why we should scan code, and then how we can communicate about those scan results, and then some problems that I have faced, other people face, and how we can approach them or try at least for some solutions there. And then, of course, why should we use more open source tools for this open source discovery and identification? And then we'll have some questions at the end. So about me, I am Oyon. I'm a core maintainer of scan code. That's my full-time job to maintain these tools, and I also maintain some other tools at About Code. And I work on mainly license identification, package identification, and summarizing scan results. So About Code is also an organization in Google Summer of Code, and that's also how I got into open source maintainership. I did my Google Summer of Code back in 2020. And since then, I'm a mentor and org admin there. I have a couple of links in the slides, so there'll be a QR code at the end to download the slides. Okay, so About Code. About Code is it's a non-profit organization, and our mission is to build FOSS tools, open data, and open standards, so we can look into our open source consumption and use. And we have, like, I am new to this, but the original authors and maintainers have been in this space and in this community for a very long time, and this is a fully community initiative, and we've been creating a lot of standards, open standards to help people in this space. And we also, some of our maintainers provide support services, and we audit or help organizations look into their code and understand how they are consuming open source to sustain ourselves and maintain these tools full time. And so we, in this modern software world, we are using more and more FOSS tools every day, and that's a good thing. We are reusing things. We are not working on the same, like, wheels, yeah. And then basically, that's a good thing because we are working on our collective technical capabilities. And like, if you're using a software and it's a small package, you'll see typically hundreds of packages. And if it's a very large app with multiple ecosystems and everything, the scale can go very big, very fast. Because of the whole dependency graph, and we always see like large apps. If we scan, there's 10,000 packages. There's like millions of individual code files. So what it clearly becomes very, very clear very soon. This is not sustainable to look through all of this manually or through just through people. You need some sort of automation and help and tools to really navigate through this. And as an open source organization, our goal is to help with tools and data on that. Then, okay, why is software license important? So here, FOSS means freedom. So what freedom do you have? And what responsibilities do those freedom bring to you? Can you use those software in different conditions, context, and then can you modify it? And if you're modifying it, do you have to redistribute the same code, and can you relicense it, or do you have to redistribute it under the same license or something, right? Sometimes you also have to give credit, you also have to attribute all the licenses that are present, and like Biju has already talked about issues in licensing and like issues that can happen, so I'm not going into that. But like, why is this important from a security perspective? Like, if something, there's a license issue, and you cannot use that package or something, it is also an availability issue. So that can really affect your like package and software. So it's really important for that reason also. Why do we need to identify what exact package do we have? Because as you can see here from the Redis blogs, and these are taken 5-6 years apart, they had an open source license, and then of course like sometimes things change for people, and then they adopt a different policy. So I'm not here to talk about what this is or what this can be, but like you have to be aware that this thing can happen, and it happens more than you think, because like there's the Redis example, there's the Elasticsearch example, there's the Terraform example, but like sometimes the community will fork the latest open source version, and then they will maintain it. For example, Valkey is a Linux Foundation project that is there to replace kind of Redis. There's OpenSearch for Elasticsearch. There's OpenTofu for Terraform. So we need to really identify where the package is coming from, the origin of it, so we can know what could be the license. Now, in case of vulnerabilities also, vulnerabilities, advisories are published by different sources, and they typically have a vulnerable version range. So it starts at a version, ends at a version, and it can be fixed by a specific version, and sometimes it's not fixed because it's not there. And you see on the right, there's the GitHub advisory database, which is a nice database, and you have affected version ranges there. There's a couple more data there on scores, severity, references, and on left, there's the public vulnerablecode.io database, which is an open database which collects and processes this, aggregates this data so that you can search by package URL and query what vulnerabilities are present. Okay, now there is another kind of problems that is not really related to vulnerabilities directly in code or like licensing, which is how well is a software maintained. Because sometimes there can be issues in like how the code is maintained, do they have good security policies, and there a lot of bad actors also kind of attack those things. And like here, there's a lot of nice FOSS project. OpenSSF does a lot of nice work on giving you data on that. They also have a open data API, so you can get, so they have what you call a criticality score for projects, and the critical projects, they publish data for that directly, which you can access by the API. For example, scan code is a critical project, so OpenSF has data on that. And then there's end of life date, so you really need to know when a software is not maintained anymore, so it's end of life. And there's also open data on that. Chaos, the community does a very good job of looking into this metrics in a very detailed, granular way. And they have these projects here, Augur, Grimoire Lab, which you can use to get more insights on these metrics. But at the end of the day, it's just metrics. It is data that you can look at. And of course, if you are like maintaining a project very nicely, chances are that you are also looking at security very well. There's at least a correlation that you can see in studies that the projects which are maintained well is also secure. But there is no direct like actionable thing that you can see that, okay, there's some data and this is not maintained, I need to look into that. So you need a bit more context, and we'll talk about that. Hope I did not use too many XKCD comics. Okay, so now you have a software. You're ideally building a software or package or consuming, And then, so what data do you want on it? So you want what are the licenses present there? You want what are the vulnerabilities which can be present? You want some data on how well it is maintained. And you ideally want this for the entire dependency graph because whether it is direct dependencies or transitive dependencies, your computer does not really know that, this is quite few levels down, so I will not look at the vulnerabilities or I will not run the vulnerable code. But of course, you use sometimes a very short subset of the actual code that is present in packages. And the many layers, if you go down, that risk becomes a bit less. But you still need to look at all the dependencies because even transitive dependencies, how many layers deep they might be, they still have access to your system or build systems in the same way that a direct dependency would have. So that's one thing. So also you need to know where exactly the package is coming from, what's the origin. And whatever we were talking about right now, this is basically what is there in software bill of materials or SBOMs. You need this data to be machine readable, right? Because of the scale that is present in modern software, it needs to be machine readable in a way which is understandable by everyone because software crosses boundaries and geographical locations, and we need to make sure everyone is talking the same language here. So SBOMs are really looking into software transparency. Because software is typically used in a lot of critical things. It can be present in your network infrastructure, it can be health tracking devices, everything. And you ideally want more transparency into what is in your software there. So that is where SBOM comes in and adds a lot of value. Now, it's also because there's a lot of law and regulations which are coming up on this. In US, there was an executive order which mandates SBOM for any business or commercial activity you do with the government, so you're selling them software. And then Europe, we have CRA, which comes into effect quite soon. And there's there's some granularity on who it is affected by. And there's maintainers, open source stewards, and manufacturers. And typically, if you are having some sort of commercial benefit from your project, either you're getting funded for your maintenance or you are selling that as a unit, then you might be directly affected by that. So that's something that you need to think about. In India, where I come from, there's also CERT, which is the Computer Emergency Response Team, which looks into security incidents that happens there. And it has published guidelines on how SBOMs should be. And usually guidelines have, minimum requirements and a bit of guidelines on how you should go about in generating a SBOM. There's also the SEBI, which is the Securities and Exchanges Board of India, which regulates all financial institutions and digital infrastructure providers. And they have published what's called cyber security and cyber resilience framework, which goes into that you need to disclose some incidents, you need to publish SBOMs if you are a regulated entity, which means banks, financial services institutions, mutual funds, all of that, right? So it's not that it's in the law very recently, so SBOM is a new thing. People have been doing this for quite a long time. When they look into products, they need to have a complete inventory of all of things. And maybe people were doing it in spreadsheets or something, which is, of course, not a great way to do things. Now, similar legislations are likely to come up. I know some legislation is there, guidelines in Japan, in Germany, in UK, that has come up recently. So it's typically getting more and more common. So what do we need to really generate these SBOMs? We need some standard package identifiers, and here are a couple of mentions of the most common ones that you can use. So package identifiers are package URLs. SPDX maintains a license list of identifiers across all ecosystems, and then for vulnerability, you have CVEs, or GitHub security advisories, which are IDs by which you can uniquely identify something. And for SBOMs, there's Cyclone DX, which is typically more focused on security, but SPDX on licensing. But they are, in the later versions, they are more supporting everything else. And we are active in these communities. We have the vulnerability exploitability exchange, and then there's a couple of formats. And so package URL was started in ScanCode because we needed to really identify unique packages to then look up in our database and look for licensing and get the original source and binaries for those packages and then scan them, right? So typically the type here is kind of a package ecosystem which hosts some code and has some standards and specific ways how you can download that thing, which can be PyP, it can be like the Linux ecosystems, Debian, RPM, and then so inside that there can be like organizations in namespace. Name version is mostly self-explanatory, and there's verse, which is another standard which looks into version ranges. And you would think, well, version ranges is just arithmetic. Why do you need a standard in that? But there's like a lot of versioning specs like semver, calver, which are very different, and then people move between them whenever they want, so things can get very hard very soon. So are these just more standards that we came up with, or like are they being used? So the answer is yes. Now, even though it was started as a ScanCode thing, it is really in the truest sense a community projects now, because there's a lot of community. Whoever uses, they recognize the value of this identifiers and standards, and a lot of tools, commercial and open source, are using it, which is good for interoperability because you really can see what the differences, have benchmarks, and see if they are being followed or not. So this is something that Michael Windsor, who is from the Alpha Omega project, he did a talk in FOSSDEM about code, actually hosts security and license compliance fringe event there, where he talked, and he talked in FOSSDEM also. And here, let's say you have some packages that you are using, and you are getting some value out of it. So then you also inherit some risk from them. So how do you go about interacting with these dependencies? So of course, if you are getting some value, and that value can go away with risks, so you want to make sure you invest a bit of your time and go engage with the maintainers, go report issues, open PRs, so you can really help them upstream, and that can really benefit. So that's fix. If for some reason they don't like your code or don't want to maintain it in long term, or if their timelines are not really matching with yours, you can fork, and it can be for a short term, and like you maintain a bit of that and forget. If some open source dependency is creating more problems than the value it brings, then you try to find other projects in the similar domain that can do the same work and have the same effect, right? And of course, there's a fourth F, which is fund. Open source communities like ourselves always have a lot of ideas and work that we want to do, but sometimes resources can really help us in that direction. So what this really focuses you to do is have a nice human relationship with your dependencies, because you can be like in their like issues and mailing lists, and you can have a chat about them, and that gives you a lot of insight into who these projects are. That makes you more conscious, because whenever you import a dependency or add something, you unconsciously add a lot of dependencies inside your dependency graph. And if you have a relationship with them, even like human, you see them at a conference, you know them a bit, and a human relationship makes you have more context into what happens into these projects. And that makes you gauge the risks better and even mitigate and help them fix. Because like sometimes if people come up to me and say that, I'm using your tool, I'm using scan code, that makes me very happy. That makes my day. So if you come up and if you help them do some project or like help them with issues, that's really nice. So human relationships help everything. So now getting into a bit of the problems. So you can scan code in many ways. You can scan it at the binary stage. You can scan it at the source stage. And binaries typically just have enough to run the code. And like they are catching up and having some metadata. But it is usually a bit less than what's present at the source. Because in binaries, you have to have some sort of system to have that information feed into it. And in source, it is not very clear what part of the subset of the source is actually deployed and present in the binary, because source can have monorepos, it can have test or like some examples or something. And people always don't follow the standards there and structures which can tell you which part of the code is deployed. So here the thing is that whenever you build your code in the build systems, they typically have a lot of information on this place. And like, for example, there's build SBOMs, source SBOMs. And like, since the build systems have a lot of information, it's very nice to do your scans and do your information like scanning there. So you get the most amount of information. And since you do a build for every release, it's also nice to generate the SBOMs for every release there. And one more thing is, typically all the like code scanners that you see out there which look for packages, they only look for package manifests. And sometimes your dependencies might not be declared there. For example, we vendor a lot of code, and vendoring can be a good thing in some cases because you want only a very specific subset of code. But people don't really document that. There needs to be some way and standard to document that, yes, I have downloaded this code from somewhere, and then it becomes very easy to track the license metadata, track the vulnerabilities for that specific thing. So those are some problems. And like, for example, there's also a lot of package ecosystems present there. For example, in scan code, we support about like 30, 40 package ecosystems, and package URL, there's like types like PyP, Debian, there's many of these. And in every ecosystem, you have a lot of like sub builders. Like, for example, PyP has poetry, there's like many different kinds of metadata. And it's not that it is a stable thing. Like every day there's like problems in the package ecosystem. So like we come up with newer ways, newer package manifests. So there's a lot of work that we have to do to support scanning those manifests and make sure the package information that we get out of it is very nice. And okay, vulnerabilities. So typically, if you are scanning for vulnerabilities in a large app, my experience is that the data is so much that we get overwhelmed by it. Like, if like all the dependencies that you have on all your dependency graphs, and they have multiple CVs sometimes, and how can you look at this? Like, first, there's the fact that even if there's a vulnerability that a scanner reports in your code or dependency graph, it does not have to be that that affects you, because the vulnerable code path might not be used. So it can be the case where you use only a subset of the code, and that becomes more and more apparent with deeper you go into the dependency graph. And also, sometimes some CVs or vulnerabilities are only applicable in certain configurations or certain environment variables and contexts. So if you only deploy it as some, like, in a web-based thing, it can become apparent there, but not in other cases. So you really need to know if it is applicable to you. And you need to know this, like, one more thing is there are like more data available on this. For example, exploitability. There's EPSS, which means exploitability predictive scoring system, which kind of predicts how likely it is to for a vulnerability to get exploited. Or there's like databases of actual vulnerabilities being exploited in the wild. So or severities across different ecosystems. So these really help you to prioritize, because when there's a lot of data, you need to really prioritize which ones you need to look at. But typically, they do not give you a very clear indication that this is not applicable or applicable. So you need to sometimes look beyond that as well. So how are we going about this differently, or why do you need to use open source tools for that? So the thing is that your entire dependency graph, there's a lot of small open source projects out there, right? And all these vulnerabilities, if a vulnerability is not applicable in their context and you are using a specific version, it might also not be applicable to you. So this work needs to be done upstream, and then it needs to be in a machine readable format and needs to be fed into this, right? So these tools, this data, all of this needs to be available to all tools as a free thing, and they must have that freedom to use and be helped by these tools. So it's very, for example, commercial tools require much more resources. So your entire supply chain might not have access to those resources to do these fixes and look into these tools. And so that's why it's very nice to work with these package ecosystems and make sure we are working with them, like let's say PyPy or Debian, to have better metadata and more transparency. We also, like different like organizations, they might have the same dependency and they might be doing the scanning for the same tool and might be doing the same analysis. So we need to have more open data so we can share among each other and have some sort of collaboration so we don't do the same work twice, right? And then, of course, you need to have a large community who look at all the use cases and report to you and help you get better, because if you have that, you are really making your tools much better. So that's why you should focus on open source tool. We have less time, so I'll skip through some of this. This is the stack. A lot of organizations, most FOSS foundations like Apache Linux, Eclipse, all of them are using this. A lot of commercial companies also use open source tools, and we know this because they also openly support us to sustain sometimes. And we are also having collaborations with many FOSS organizations, like Hugging Face is using is to have a license database of permissive code to train LLMs. We are working with these folks, and there's a lot of other FOSS tools. You don't need to just use our tool. You can use this amazing other FOSS tools. These are out there, which sometimes also uses scan code as a dependency. We need your help with a lot of bug reports, help, and if you can help us sustain these projects or anything, it's nice. And you can download the slides or look into our GitHub here. And these are the credits, and maybe we have a time for some questions.
Thank you a lot for all your sharing, Ayans. Unfortunately, we just run out of time,
Okay, no
and it's also over time with the next speaker.
Okay, no
so
worries.
we really want to say thank you for
Okay,
your
thank you.
sharing. I believe our speaker
Yes.
will be around. So feel free to reach out to him if you guys have any questions relay into the talk of Ayans and scan code. So thank you so much for your time.
And thank you to FOSSASIA for organizing this nice community. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. We will move into our next talk very shortly. So I would introduce a little bit about our speaker now when our volunteer try to set up and show up the slide. So in the next talk, if you are a Java developer, you will really love it. The next talk is about Enterprise Java Renaissance with Jakarta EE. And we have our speaker here, Tanya. She is a Java Program Senior Manager at Eclipse Foundation. Everyone, please give Tanya a warm welcome.
So, hi everyone. My name is Tanya Obradovic. Today I'm here talking mainly as Jakarta program manager. I will be telling you, kind of giving you all the application of the knowledge gained today. So we had the legal aspects, we had the standard aspects, so everything can be applied and looked through the eyes of the project, like we have the Eclipse Foundation, which is Jakarta. So I'll tell you a little bit more about it, but before that, I do work for the Eclipse Foundation. We call it the Community for Open Innovation and Collaboration. And it is, you probably know actually about Eclipse IDE. And just so you know, that's just one of the projects at the Eclipse Foundation. We have over 430 at this moment projects. We have over 300 members, organization members, more than 15,000 contributors and committers. So the organization in terms of the foundation is quite big, and we're welcoming you to explore a little bit more. Jakarta is just one of the projects, big projects. So if you forget everything else that I mentioned today, please do remember the website. It's very easy, jakarta.ee, and we're trying and making, trying really hard to make all the information available on the website. If you miss something, just get in touch and let us know what we should publish on that website. So what exactly is Jakarta-EE? If you're a Java developer, you do know about Java EE, and you also know that it was kind of single, it was open source forever, but it was single vendor dominated technology. And for the longest time, actually Oracle was managing Java EE. What happened is that community, the users of the technology, made quite a bit of pressure and requested, due to the lack of development of the technology and standards, to push the whole technology into open source and open source foundation. Well, at the time, the choice was to contribute to the technology to Eclipse Foundation. And, you know, the conversation started in 2017, about 2018, I think it was summertime or fall time when it actually made the transfer to the Eclipse Foundation. So here is the set of specifications that make Jakarta-EE technology. This is somewhat, if you see here, without any versions, just to give us an idea of how big this set of specification and the whole platform is. And you will see that we have right now the core profile, web profile, and then the full set represents Jakarta-EE platform. So moving on, each of these little blue boxes on the previous slide is representing a specification. So what exactly is a specification? It's a specification document, it's an API, and it's a test compatibility kit. And what is that test used for? We are testing any implementation against at least one open source compatible implementation to verify that the implementation is built on the standards and as expected. So only at that time we can call something a final specification and we can ratify it for the final version. And it could potentially be made into one of the profiles or even a platform. So looking into various releases since the whole technology became and then finally made it into Eclipse Foundation. Once upon a time, or in 1995, Java started, and relatively soon, a couple of years later, the first version of Enterprise Java emerged, which is in 1999. And then if you can see here that it became Java EE in 2006. And a part of the Oracle or JSP in terms of the process and production of the specification was in 2009. From 2009 to 2017, there were just a couple of releases of Jakarta E, and that's why it was a pressure from the community and users to move it into Eclipse Foundation. In 2017, the conversation started, and in 2020, we actually made this huge move from Javax namespace, I will talk about it a little bit later, to Jakarta namespace, and true innovation in the technology has started. So looking into the Jakarta specific releases, you can see in 2018 we started with the last version of Java EE8. We moved it to the Eclipse Foundation infrastructure as Java EE8. And then with the Javax namespace, but new process, which is Jakarta Enterprise Specification Process, with new licensing and new logo. There was a Jakarta EE8 version. After that, with the Jakarta EE9, the community decided to make just one change, which was completely needed based on the Oracle requirement, so legal restrictions. So we needed to move away from Javax namespace to Jakarta namespace, and that was the version 9. It was a blessing in disguise now looking back, just because it revealed how many technologies out there are actually dependent on this set of specifications. And I'll show you a slide in a second. Jakarta E 9.1 was all about multiple implementations, compatible implementations at the time of the release. Previously, during the JCP, we had one. I even forgot how they called it. It was not compatible implementation. There was Glassfish. Glassfish was the only implementation that was used for the certifications and for testing and verifying that specifications are made up to a standard. Jakarta E10, we introduced core profile that was created, again, based on the community demand for the smaller runtimes and more geared towards microservices. Finally, we are at the Jakarta E11 with the new Jakarta data spec with major updates in terms of the testing, test compatibility kit, and of course, new features and new updates. So if we really look into our release cadence in terms of the community development and innovation, we're looking from 2020, we had Javax to Jakarta namespace. In 2022, we had Jakarta core profile, and now 2024 and 2025, and I'll tell you a little bit more why we're having this kind of 24-25 year in a second. We're producing the latest version, but at the same time, we're already thinking about Jakarta E12 and even beyond that. So 11 is all about developer productivity and performance. In Q4, we released the Jakarta E core profile. In the Q1, we're expecting a web profile, and shortly after that, we're expecting the platform. So here is Jakarta E11 platform with all the versions of the individual specifications. Also, just to mention that part of the 11, I'll go back, part of the 11 platform are all of these individual specifications, and all of them are already ready to go. And if you wanted to check out any one of them, the release is available. Even some betas of the platform are available. What we're looking at is completion of the TCK updates, so the test compatibility kit updates, in order to do the final release of the version 11. So here are all the implementations of the Jakarta technology. Probably not all of them, because the whole point of this slide is to show you where to find all the compatible implementations, which is jakarta.ee/compatibility. But you can see the, and I'm sure you will be, if you're familiar with the Enterprise Java, you will recognize some of the products here, and the list is growing as we speak. So who are the industry leaders who are interested in this technology and are helping driving this technology? So we have different levels of membership, and you can see all the members here. I do want to point out that we have quite a few members in Asia, and there is a lot of interest from in this continent about this technology, which is great to see, considering this is FOSSASIA. So we're welcoming more members or more individuals to join and participate. So without really talking further about the technology, I want to invite you to get involved, and this will go back to some of the conversations that we had earlier. It is explaining why everyone should consider getting involved in open source in general. And of course, I'm a little bit biased here, so I'm inviting you to consider participation in Jakarta EE. So it's a great opportunity to advance your career, that's one thing, but learning from the leading companies and leading thinkers in the industry is another thing. So you will be actually gaining the experience. You will be advancing in your journey through a recognition. And you can work anytime or any way you want, and you will have an opportunity to impact the technology. So absolutely, there is only good reason to try to get involved in open source. And how do you do that? At Eclipse Foundation, it's really easy. There is a page for that as well, just in the case you want to give it a try. But all you need as an individual is to sign Eclipse Contributor Agreement, because after all, we need to know who are our contributors, and we need to make sure that the code is properly managed. So we do need a little bit of paperwork. There is no requirement, any other requirement to start off. And what type of work can you do? Also, it was mentioned earlier in the day that there are a lot of ways to contribute. It does not need to be a technical work. Actually, most of the people who get involved in open source do not start with doing the technical work right away. There are plenty of opportunity to do just marketing and promotional work. There is also opportunity to work on documentation, on blog posts, any collateral, and then slowly move on into, in this technology, maybe reviewing some examples, updating, doing some work on some implementations, and finally improving specifications as well. And to start with, we do want to get connected with you. Again, jakarta.ee/connect will give you an opportunity to sign up for various mailing lists, whether it's with the whole community or the working group and the members. There is a Slack workspace where you can communicate with people directly. And you can follow various other activities, including tech talks and other events that we organize related to Jakarta E. So be part of the community. We have the events where in your local language, so let's suppose in Thai there is interest for Enterprise Java. You can definitely organize meetups or even Jakarta One live streams that are specific to this technology. Get in touch and try to engage with the local Java community. We also would love to have the organizations involved. So if there is any interest of the organization you work for to get involved and work with the Eclipse Foundation, there are 3 easy steps. You become Eclipse Foundation member. You can become part of the working group. I know we didn't talk much about the working group, but today we don't have time about that, time for that. But yes, I will let you know if you're interested after the talk how your organization can become a member of the working group. And then as an organization or employee of an organization, you can start participating and working in advancing Jakarta e-technology. So here are our members. Once again, we're currently having 32 members. The latest one is one of the Ant groups. So we heard the earlier talk from Ant Group this morning. And that is all I have. I try to be really, really fast and kind of even make up some time. Hopefully that worked well for everyone. Let me know if you have any comments or questions.
All right, everyone. Are there any questions for our speaker? Are there any questions relating to Jakarta EE? So
Actually, I have a question for audience. Is anyone using Java? Is anyone using Jakarta? No? Spring? Oh, did I miss? I missed. Oh, there is one slide that I missed. So there, just a comment for Spring users. How many specifications Spring is using from Jakarta EE? I'm sure you know. Well, not the number, but you're aware that underneath there, there is a slide that is missing here. I think I changed the version on you and then you on me. It is quite telling to see how many various technologies are dependent on Jakarta EE and the various specifications, but JPA is one of the specifications that Spring is using, Servlet as well. So there are many, many various technologies that are dependent on some of the individual specifications in Jakarta EE. Maybe question for you guys. Now to give you opportunity for you to ask me a question.
Yeah, all right, everyone. First of all, I really want to say thank you, Tanya, for very insightful and informative sharing today. If you guys have any questions relating to Jakarta EE, Java, Eclipse Foundation, feel free to reach out to Tanya anytime when you see her around. And another round of applause for Tanya for the sharing today. Thank you a lot.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
And hold it like. Hello.
All right, everyone. We will move into another very interesting talk today. So for the next talk, we will have the topic freedom of choice, how metrics enable interoperability and a better chat experience with our speaker, Nadine. She is the founder of Polyjazz. I met Nadine 2 days ago, and then she just like shared with us a really amazing story about Polyjazz in Matrix Foundation as well. And I believe that Nadine will have like amazing presentation and sharing with all of us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Nadine a warm welcome.
Thank you very much for this very kind introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm Nadine. I'm, as introduced, talking today about freedom of choice and how how Matrix enables interoperability. And my tongue already has a knot in it, but I hope you forgive me. So, starting off with a little bit about myself. I'm a designer. I'm not a technical person. I'm a designer and UX specialist. I'm also a Matrix enthusiast. And in my spare time, I do yoga, and I just learned how to kitesurf. Why am I telling you my hobbies? Maybe you experience that if you have a hobby and you're meeting people outside your social bubble or your normal social bubble, you are in the need for ad hoc communication. And then you might experience problems like I had recently. In Germany, I have a yoga group, and when we formed, we had a very nice session and very relaxed Shavasana, and then we decided, hey, we feel so good with each other. Let's connect in a chat group, then we can meet outside the yoga, and we get to know each other a little bit. Everyone got out their phones, and then we started the argument. What shall we use? Are we going to use WhatsApp? No, I don't use WhatsApp. I don't want to send my data to Meta. Let's use Telegram instead. No, Telegram is not as safe as they pretend, blah, 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 blah. I swear to you, within 10 minutes, all the relaxation was gone. And by now, we still don't have a chat group. Freedom of choice. People choose their messengers for a reason. There might be a certain need for security. There might be a need for data protection, or it's just that I use a certain messenger for my social bubble. I have to admit, I originally installed Telegram for the cool stickers. So everyone has their reasons and needs. Anyway, a situation like that, if we don't have a situation of interoperability here, we have a case of communication impossible, which is certainly not a good user experience. Second example, I was lucky enough to spend my last 4 weeks on Kopangan learning how to kitesurf, childhood dream come true. And I spoke to my kite teacher about his chat experiences and how he uses his chat and what he uses. And he had this very cool habit, quite useful to... He was running a channel on both Telegram and WhatsApp, informing the students like how the wind is, how the kite is. Today it will be useful for beginners to come at that time and for advanced people to come at that time. However, he was supplying 2 channels, WhatsApp and Telegram. And personally, he used Lime, so he had this hassle of having to fulfill 3 channels. From the student type of view, from the student view, the people who had Telegram, yeah, they were cool. They were catered for with information. People using Telegram as well, people using Signal had to be told by other people in person because they didn't use the channel which the information was flowing. Yeah, also a very bad user experience, if you ask me. This is what I personally call the situation of a messenger zoo. I personally have about 8 messengers on my phone because I like to communicate with people, but I tell you it's not comfortable. Right, let's talk about interoperability. Interoperability is quite usual if we think of telephony, letters, roads. Imagine we would have a situation where you call someone, like in Germany, I have a telephone contract with O2. I call someone in Thailand who has an, is it AIS contract. Let's imagine it wouldn't be interoperable and I phone to a lady in the middle and then she hears what I say and she passes it on to the other phone, like, you know, the old kind of connection people. That would not be interoperability, but we are used to interoperability. In the same way when we send a letter, the letter does not taken out of his envelope on the border, stuck into a new envelope and passed on. We are used to interoperability in this context. However, why are we being sold non-interoperable chat systems? Why are we not demanding and taking for granted, or other way around, why are we taking for granted that chat messengers are venue locked in systems where we can't talk from a WhatsApp account to a Lime account? Why not? Effectively, in my opinion, these proprietary services aren't selling us features or software. They're effectively selling us a social network. And effectively, they're selling us our own social network. So in my opinion, this is absurd. Let's talk more about the situation we have, the lack of interoperability. So as I said, in these 2 situations I had before, the yoga group, the kitesurfing group, communication with lack of interoperability is either impossible or time-consuming. Also, if we stick to one or just a few non-interoperable chat systems, our communication is fragile. I had a situation, again, an anecdote to my life. I'm in a chat communication with my personal trainer, and he always wants to know what I eat and what I experience and how I felt that day. And the chat with him has developed a bit into a personal diary for me. And then he changed the app, and the app was non-interoperable. And I literally lost 5 years of very personal diary. And believe me, I was in tears about this. So, and also to move into a little bit more of a political situation, coming from Germany or from Europe, where the sort of right-wing extremism is rising in a very uncomfortable and worrying way, I believe that not being able to communicate over the borders of messaging service keeps people in a social bubble. We are endangered having a confirmation bias, opinions become more extreme. So I actually think that before that was very inconvenient, but from a social point of view and political point of view, lack of interoperability is even dangerous. So you have noticed already, I'm not a fan of it. Right. In come the Matrix. Matrix, you might maybe have come by our stall at the end of the corridor. You might have seen Jan's talk yesterday about Matrix. I will tell you about it really briefly and from a not technical point of view, or maybe a little bit. So Matrix is a protocol for messaging. That's very brief. You can also use it for file transfer, video call, cooperative functionalities, bots, all the big colorful potpourri of data. It's a protocol. You can have various clients you can use for communicating. It's really worth going to the website matrix.org. There is a list of clients you can use, and it's very useful for all sorts of different things. Matrix is the good on the good side of things, so it's easy to develop it, it's encrypted, it's open source. That's the end of my sales talk. What I think is really interesting when you're on the matrix.org site, and unfortunately I cannot link to the website here, or I don't know to do it, but if you go onto website.org and you go under Foundation about Matrix, there is this Matrix Manifesto. I'm not sure whether it's usually used that like software has a manifesto. I'm really impressed with that. There are 4 points on this manifesto, and the most important point, number 2, for me the most important point is people should not be locked into centralized communication silos, but instead be free to pick who they choose to host their communication, without limits who they can reach. So the Matrix guys have interoperability in their manifesto. That's one of their missions. So now I'm getting a bit confused with all my files here. So how they're doing this? Matrix has a thing called bridges. That's what really got me onto Matrix. Bridges, as the name suggests, bridge into other systems. Again, go onto the website under matrix.org ecosystems. There is a list of all the bridges. Bridges run on the server, and they do what the name suggests. They bridge into other systems. So you can, on your server, install, let's say, bridge to Telegram, and then you go into your chat and you invite the bridge. Sorry for that. You invite the bridge, which is the bot. Oops. You invite the bridge, which is the bot, and then within this chat, you can invite someone who is a Telegram user. However, for installing this bridge, there's a little bit of expert knowledge needed. It doesn't come out of the box. You will have to ask your admin to do that. And also a little bit of a bad thing about it is bridging, as of now, will break the end-to-end encryption. But that's just a side note. So another negative aspect about bridging, which I haven't listed here, in order to use the bridges, you need to use Matrix. Now, while as this is a very good reason for all of you to install Matrix, and if you need help with that, come to our booth. The bad thing about it is that Matrix, I had earlier today someone on the stall going like, oh, I've never heard of Matrix, and they actually were in that field. Now, if you imagine going out of this conference, outside into the world of the, I would say, technically not as literal people, who has heard of Matrix? If I say Matrix, they tell me about something like Keanu Reeves and the Matrix movie. I personally think that technology, especially the innovative technology we create here, needs to be brought to the common user. I was in a very interesting talk this morning where the speaker said, free software is meaningless if it's not used to free the people. I personally call that, what good is technology for if it's not made accessible? So obviously I have to say that as a user interface designer, but I use this to draw your attention to 2, let's say, consumer products which are based on Matrix. So one is called Beeper. Beeper uses bridges. It's I think you could say it's a proprietary company. You can install Beeper, and it's basically a kind of dashboard for all your other messengers. So you can link up your WhatsApp account, your Telegram account. I think it bridges into LinkedIn, Instagram, what have you. They're really cool. The interface is sleek. It's solving the problem my kite surfing teacher would have. The personal cons I see is, yes, it uses the multiple inbox problem, but it only uses the multiple inbox problem. Not my yoga group wouldn't be helped with that. Also, you still need accounts in the target networks. It doesn't keep you from having a WhatsApp account. It keeps you from having to open the WhatsApp account if you want to communicate with people there. But you still would have to have that. You would still have to pass on your metadata to WhatsApp and so on and so on. And last but not least, Beeper is another app to install. And I have the experience whenever I want to convince someone else to use something else, and they go, oh God, yet another app to install. So from my point of view, I mean, you can't argue with that. It's like not really interoperability as it should be in my point of view. PolyChat. You have to forgive me for being a bit more enthusiastic and detailed about PolyChat. PolyChat is my own project, so obviously I'm more enthusiastic about it. PolyChat is really a way to experience interoperability, making it tangible. You don't have to have an account in the target network in order to speak with people in the target network. And last but not least, it's not an app. You don't have to install another app. It's a web service. You don't have to learn a different app because people can keep using whatever messenger they've been using before. The con about it is not functioning yet. It's a prototype, and I'm always looking for ideas for funding or contribution. I will tell you later on how to reach us and to have a look at the code and whatever, and have more details about it. Just really briefly to show you the screens, how this works. So in order to create a group chat, you go onto the website, join.polychat.de. It's not functioning at the moment. You type in the group name, you generate a QR code, and then you send out the QR code to your users, or you actually show it to them and they scan it, like when you're on a one-to-one in one room. Then to join the group chat, people would scan the QR code, they go on the website, they get a number of choices, currently 3, and they can choose whatever messenger service they want to join the network with. They put their name in. The name does not have to be your name. It doesn't have to be the same name in every PolyChat. So you might want to use a name which is really, I don't know, in my yoga room, I might be the yoga queen. In my kitesurfing group, I might be the beginner who always crashes the kites. I don't know. You put your name, you click join, and then it actually opens the app you chose, and your whole communication from there on is in the app you chose. And when you speak to other people, you can see that actually like they are in their, I mean, again, it's like it's a mock-up, but you can actually see that people can communicate with their own network. What you see here, and this is another, maybe that's an unnecessary detail. If you want to hear more about PolyChat, come to the booth. I can talk for hours about it. It's probably not the right frame here. Right. No talk about interoperability without mentioning the Digital Markets Act. I'm trying to be really short about it. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it. It is a regulation in Europe. It is to break the monopoly, if you will. What I find positive about it is that the government looks at interoperability. In the text, in the law text, it says gatekeepers have to make themselves interoperable. Gatekeepers is defined depending on numbers of users, money, whatever. Effectively, that's Meta. So we're talking here about Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp. I think Apple has winched their way out somehow. The cons about it is that in the regulation, it is the smaller networks who have to apply to be interoperable. So it's actually the effort is by the smaller networks. They still have to fulfill Meta's encryption standards. So for the smaller ones, it's the possible financial expenditure to actually reprogram their encryption to fit into Meta's requirements. And also one of the Meta's requirements is that they still want to have the metadata from and the IDs from the users from the other networks. And that has, for example, followed through Signal as an example, have stated publicly that they will not apply for interoperability because most of their users are, or well, arguably people are at Signal because they don't want to send their details to Meta. Fun fact, Meta and Element, who is like the makers of Matrix, they have collaborated and proved that the interoperability based on Matrix is technically feasible. To my knowledge, the project has not been pushed forward. Meta has opted out to follow up that for reasons unknown. Just leave that here. How am I doing for time? 1 minute. Oh God, I hurry up. So, learnings. Interoperability enhances user experience. Yay. Interoperability is technically possible with Matrix. Yay. But gatekeepers and politicians won't push for interoperability. We have to do it. This is my one but last slide. My last slide is my favorite quote to remind you on your responsibility and impact. The visions we implement today become the future, the normality of future generations. We can do something about it. Let's do something about it. Thank you very much.
Yay, thanks a lot for the sharing, Nadine. Unfortunately, we just run out of time, so we don't have enough of time for the Q&A. But as Nadine shared, we have the booth of Matrix outside, so feel free to reach out to Nadine and another Matrixer. We have Kim, we have Sean over there, and ask them any question related to Matrix and Polychat. I believe that they will really happy to have you on that. So we will have 1 minute break before we move into the next session. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, for the next talk, it will be really helpful for anyone who interested to start to contribute to open source. So we will have our next speaker, Untari. She is the contributor for open source contributor to the Event Yes project under FOSSASIA. And the topic she wants to share with us today, that's her own experience contributing to Event Yes, a Google Summer of Code experience. Everyone, please give Untari a warm welcome.
Hi everyone, thank you. Thank you, Wendy. My name is Suntari. I'm a software developer based in Singapore. I'm currently a full-time student in computer science, specialized in machine learning and AI in University of London. So today I will talk a little bit about my experience contributing to EVNY through Google Summer of Code 2024. So what is GSOC? I'm sure most of the people here know what is GSOC. So it's basically a global program for students or new developers that wants to contribute in open source. It also helps the open source organization to attract new contributors every year. And the aim is to grow FOSS community and also bringing new contributors to open source project. And yeah, it's always happen on the summer. So how does it work? So usually the organization will apply and are selected by Google. When it's selected, the organization will publish the idea list, and the student will submit the application to the project that they're interested to the organization. And the organization will select the student, and once the selected student get accepted, they will work with the mentors. They have two different workload. I think the short one is around 10 weeks, and the large project will be around 16 to 22 weeks. And there will be stipend paid upon milestone, which is they divided into 2 milestones, which is the midterm and the final term. But usually they have, if you can pass the midterm, then they will give you 1/3, and you can continue contribute to the final terms, and they give the full stipend. To note that if you fail the midterms, then you cannot go through the final terms. So what is EventYay? So it's open source event management platform where you guys using it to check the schedule, buy tickets, and all this. And it also has the virtual hybrid in-person events. So currently, we have 2 versions of EventYay. This is the old version where we use for the summit. So this EventYay is very old, and it was used to, the project lead was passed away during COVID, and no one maintained the project anymore, so it abandoned for quite some time. And it's hard to find a developer because they use quite old technologies. So we come up with the new version of EventYay, which we use the Pretix, Venulis, which is open source project ecosystem that is out there, and we try to use the newer framework like Django and Postgres and Vue.js. So this is the simple way to put the architecture of EventYay. The front end is built in Vue.js. The back end is using Django. And for the database, we're using Postgres SQL. And the deployment is using Docker-based with CI/CD workflow. And also integrated to YouTube, Jitsi, and Big Blue Button. So the new versions is already out there. And we use it for like Wikimedia conference events and other events. So EventYay runs in Docker container. So there's a different component in the Docker where these 3 components is related to each other. We have EventYay tickets where you can buy the tickets. And EventYay talk is mostly for the speaker where you can upload your talk and manage your talk. And EventYay video is the video streaming, which is people can use the video to stream, and there's different interpretation for the video. And there is new plugin that we developed, which is the EventYay check-in that you guys see in the registration, where you can just scan QR your ticket and it print it immediately, and the developer is there. So you can talk if you're interested in that. So, what did I do on my summer last year? So I discovered FOSSASIA and the projects through GitHub. So I contribute to EventYay through GitHub during my GSOC. And first of all, I have to learn the structure of EventYay because it's not easy, I guess. And first of all, you have to read the documentation and review the issues and make PR. Last one, you have to submit your personnel for GSOC. You need to specify the detail and approach and the solution that you can give to the project that you're interested on to work in GSOC. Then, in the end of the internship, you will gain some experience and continue to contribute in the organization. So, what did I do during GSOC? Don't know. So I set up automated deployment with Docker, and I also implemented live interpretation system for multiple language event, which is the EventYay video. So there is, because using YouTube, you cannot you cannot put live interpretations because you don't have that. So we integrate this YouTube, and then you can select the languages, and at the back, there is real interpreter talking about with different languages that you can select. And I also enhance the UI, UX for better experience and contribute. Oh, there is something, but it's covering up with the GIF. It's basically I contribute to texting and also fixing some other issues. So how to get involved? First, check FOSSASIA repository. There's bunch of project that is there. There's PS Lab, Android, most of the active. And this is the important part. So when you try to apply for GSOC, please read the documentation first before you email the mentor like, hey sir, how do we get started? Because they're busy, they have their own full-time job, and they don't get paid. So try to read the documentation, get familiar with the project, try to set up. Yeah. And this is like the high-level setup with Evenye. Straightforward, but probably you will go through some issues, some error. And tomorrow there is workshop from Norbert, which is the boss of Evenye. And you can go to the workshop and learn how to set up Evenye on your local system. And good news for all the student or new contributor this year, GSOC is happening again, and FOSSASIA is participating with multiple projects. And it's a great opportunity for everyone to learn open source and gain more experience. So how to contribute and get involved? Join the FOSSASIA GitHub repository. You can start with a smaller issue and try to make PRs and get used to the ecosystem that even you have. And also you can engage the discussion on GitHub or the community channel, which is the QR code there, is our Telegram Evenye support. And yeah, follow the contribution guideline and documentation. And good luck with applying for GSOC. And I listed like few projects that FOSSASIA have this year. There's Evenye, Suzy AI, Scrum Helper, and Light Batch Magic, which is this one. We have the apps that is developed by our community, so you can check it out. And they also have workshop tomorrow, Pocket Science Lab also. So yeah, good luck. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I guess we have like very little time if any question, but you also can reach me out anywhere. And there's also Google Summer of Code booth that you can ask Stephanie or Mary. Thank you.
Yeah, all right. Thank a lot for the sharing, Untari. If any of you guys want to start to contribute to open source, Google Summer of Course is a really, really good program that you can consider to apply. We not only have Untari as the mentee of Google Summer of Course, we have Sri over there, also a mentee of Google Summer of Course, and one of the organizers for the FOSSASIA Summit today. We have the booth of Google Summer of Course outside, so you guys like feel free to reach out to any organizer and ask any question. They will really happy to answer all of your questions. We will have like 1 minute break before we move into our closing talk. Thanks everyone. All right. Hi, everyone. Are you guys ready for the closing talk today? Moving into our last session, we will have a really interesting topic. That's also the question I asked myself when I started working in Kubernetes release team 2 years ago. The talk we have today for our closing session will be what's in the name open source. And our speaker for the topic will be Phil Robb. He is the president of Ericsson Software Technology. So everyone, please give Phil a round of applause for his presentation today. And Phil, it's your time now.
Thank you very much. Last session of the day. All right, let's see if we can keep the energy going here. So I'm going to start off with something that has actually nothing to do with open source, kind of. Only because who in the audience has ever heard of Amy Webb? Raise your hand. Oh, there you go. Well, yeah, that's only because I told you earlier. Okay. This is a really interesting resource. I find it profoundly interesting. Every year, this person, she runs an organization called the Future Today Strategy Group. She presents at South by Southwest every year. She just did a presentation earlier this week. It's on YouTube. Again, pull down the slides. You can find these, or just look up Amy Webb and Future Today. They put out a report that's literally 1,000 pages long, covering 15 major topics. The theme this year is actually the combination of artificial intelligence with advanced sensors, and they're really advanced, as well as bioengineering. And those three together basically are causing a tectonic shift in innovation. All of this has to relate, for me, back to what's going to be an open source in this space, what's going to be an open innovation in this space, because I'm a licensing wonk, how that actually works from a licensing and allowance standpoint. So I find every year when she comes out with this report, it to be really, really interesting. I just watched her thing this morning and I thought, you know what, I'm going to add this just so I can pass along this information. So there you go. A little bit about me. So been doing software since about 1983, a couple of regular application gigs, started doing networking for Honeywell in 87, Motorola in 89, interesting company called Unix Technology that was basically making Unix boxes look like IBM mainframes on SNA networks. Did a .com called Critical Path, joined Hewlett-Packard in 2001, and that's where I actually started working with open source. Ultimately formed and led their open source program office starting from about 2006. Left them to join the Linux Foundation because they were starting a bunch of networking projects. And again, I have an affinity towards networking. Was the VP of operations for that. Joined Ericsson in 2019. And I plan on retiring in 2026 and becoming a boat captain. Also, as my role of leading this open source activity at Ericsson, I'm also a board member of the Linux Foundation, as well as a board member of the Open Infrastructure Foundation. And if you didn't catch the news earlier this week, Open Infrastructure Foundation announced that they are going to be merging with the Linux Foundation. So I'll be on one less board. That's great. But it will be a governing board then within the Linux Foundation. And finally, even though I have all those affiliations, this talk is really my personal views, and I don't represent any of those foundations, nor my employer in this particular talk. So, when I started in open source, the term was generally known to mean permissionless use, have a particular set of user freedoms, and also frictionless collaborative development. It meant all three of those together. So back in the early 2000s when we were working, that was the assumption. And from a standard and cultural norm aspect, that's what it looked like. So permissionless is really interesting and important if you work in a company, because what that has always meant to me is that it meant that you didn't have to go to the sourcing organization to figure out the contract if you could use this piece of software that you pulled down off of the internet or not. And that was the big difference, right? So in the generic sense, permissionless means you can take it and use it and share, modify, study, and so forth. without getting any permission from the author. But more importantly, inside of a company, it meant that it's been around long enough and the lawyers in that company know enough about open source definition that if a license complies with the OSI, then it's, in general, safe to use. Now, GPL has a particular set of restrictions or obligations, rather, associated with it, so you have to explain to the developers when and how you use that, but otherwise, it's not something that goes through sourcing. User freedoms, so again, and I hope I'm not beating too much of a dead horse, pardon the US colloquialism, but I've seen several talks today talking about the fact that use, study, modify, and share are very important user freedoms that are associated with open source software. And we've understood those to mean that for a long, long time. And it's very important for how you have autonomy and the ability to use this code. And then, again, from a cultural norm standpoint, it also meant frictionless collaborative development, right? The benefit of being able to work with open source software is that you're usually in a community of like-minded individuals and organizations trying to accomplish some common set of goals. And that's really important because of the network effect. And I see two network effects that happen inside of open source ecosystems. First is the user network effect, and this is the same as why is Facebook so valuable? It's so valuable because there are so many people on it. If there weren't anybody on it, it wouldn't be valuable. So it's that network, it's the ability to engage and have others around. It works the same way with open source code as a user because it often means interoperability, it means compatibility. The reason open source is so much more effective than standards are because even if there's a bug in the standard, you're using the same set of code, and so it just works. I remember back in my early networking days, we used to buy networking stacks from third-party companies, right? Honeywell and Motorola bought the same networking stack from some third-party company, and they specialized in TCP/IP stacks. And the reason you bought from them was because TCP/IP specs weren't perfect, but if you used the same code from the same third-party vendor, it just always worked. And so it was just easier to do that. But when open source came along, there was no longer a need to have that third-party vendor because we just all built it in open source. So user network effects are important. Developer network effects are important, but in a different way with open source. So developer network effects happen when different users with different use cases come and use the same technology and add the piece that they need. I used to always tell the story of, when I started off in computers, and we moved from minis to PCs, and then PCs and beyond, you didn't use the same operating system from one type of machine to the next, right? There were mainframes, they had an operating system. You had minis that had Unix, often as well as VMS. And then you had PCs that had MS-DOS, right? And none of those were the same. And when MS-DOS and the hardware around PCs got better, it took forever to get past 1 megabit, or 1 megabyte rather, of memory, if you remember those days, right? Or when multi-core came along, or 64-bit processors came along. Those took forever to actually evolve inside the software because it was always trailing the hardware. But with Linux, when we had Android phones in your pocket go to multi-core and 64-bit, it was there immediately because that same operating system was being used in very large systems and ultimately in supercomputers. Similarly, when all of the small footprint companies, individual IoT devices as well as phones, they needed a small footprint, small memory, very efficient power usage. Well, that wasn't very important to the server organizations or companies who were running large servers, but when data centers got to be more and more prolific, it became really interesting and important to those supercomputer folks when all of the P-states that existed inside of the Linux kernel to be able to manage power, saving lots and lots of money by shutting down and slowing down the processors with lower states of power usage because the machine was under less of a load. So point being is areas of innovation for one class of users ends up over time becoming really interesting and important to other classes of users. And that's a network effect from a development standpoint. And so it's different. But these are some of the huge values that come with the way that open source has evolved and what it actually brings to us as a society. Over these last 25 years, though, that has begun to be diminished. And over the last few years, that is also gaining increased pace. So permission to use is now required on some of these new licenses. Organizations like HashiCorp, like Elastic, like Redis, they'll make statements that say, well, this is really an open source license. It's just limiting people from competing with us. Well, as you've heard in other talks, or at least I have today, that's stopping a usage. That's stopping a particular type of organization. So it's not open source. And that's an extremely important differentiation to make. Similarly, there was a time back, particularly in the early aughts or mid-aughts of the century, where a way of getting around this having to provide source code, they would provide source code, but they would obfuscate it. They would run it through an obfuscator that would turn all of the variable names into single letters. And from one version of their release to the next, they'd change the obfuscator so the variables weren't the same, right? So it was extremely difficult to reverse engineer from source code. Technically, they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, right? That ultimately got shut down, but that's the type of loopholes that organizations will try to find in our ecosystem. Now we have the problem of challenging in collaboration as well as refusal to collaborate. So like I said, a network effect in the development of an open source project is very helpful when that project takes contributions from diverse sets of users. But we have both reasons, one of commercial interest, where organizations, if you've ever tried to actually collaborate with Google on their latest release of Android, you really shouldn't bother, because that's not what they do. It's open source software, the user has those permissions, but they're not interested in collaborating as a community. And that's just something that has always been part of the Android ecosystem. We also have, because we have so many different open source projects, many of which are run by literally individuals that aren't employed to do that maintenance work, they actually don't have the time. They don't have the time or the space to do PR reviews, to keep up with all of the management associated with managing a community. So that's diminishing the usefulness of that project, not to the fault of the maintainer, they just need help. I go to many, many different events where one of the major themes, including the Linux events, where the Linux maintainers are burnt out. Maintainer burnout in Linux is a real thing. It's not as though they're not getting paid to do Linux work, but they're usually getting paid to do features for the company they work for, not review other people's PRs, not maintaining the project as a manager. And so they do that on their nights and weekends. And that's great because they're passionate about the project. They want to do that for their community for a year or two, right? But now they've done it for a decade or two, and they're getting kind of tired. This is a problem with our ecosystem that we need to fix. It's not their fault, but it is something that now since society is so dependent on all of this software, these are collective problems we have to figure out together. So if we map this, I've got, along the top here, I've got free and open source software with collaborative development intent, then with challenged development, with restricted development, free and open source software with no collaborative development, as well as source available, the new licenses that are coming out from Redis and organizations like that, and then where we've always just been with freeware. User protections, copyleft, it's actually questionable because without a license like a GPL license that requires each user in the chain down the stream has the same rights as those before it, then actually that user protections don't really work in open source at all, except in those type of copyleft licenses. And that's one dimension of collaboration that is often not seen, right? We collaborate together in an upstream, but we don't ensure freedoms for the users downstream. So when you see the Free Software Foundation, who has also come out with an AI ML license, and you hear them talk about what ideologically they're trying to protect, I fully appreciate that. And the Apache license is the most prevalent that we have in our ecosystem today, and it doesn't do that cascading of rights down through the users. It's usually the case that an organization takes it from upstream, they make modifications, they add it to their proprietary product. It's valuable to the ecosystem in that sense, but it doesn't continue to proliferate downstream. Permission limitless use, again, is definitely good in all of the free and open source licenses, as well as is the ability to use, study, modify, and share. And then, like I said, frictionless collaboration. The license isn't really what is driving that. It's the culture and the ability of the community to support that collaborative ecosystem. That's something that, like I said, I think as an as an ecosystem, we should be working really hard to preserve. Finally, open source AI. We've also heard a lot about that throughout this set of meetings, or throughout this week. I personally like the model open framework because it has 3 different classifications. One of the things I just wanted to call out in this talk was when we talk about data, got to have open data, and we need open data. Recognize that a lot of that data is intellectual property owned by somebody else. It's a book that somebody wrote. It's a movie that somebody did. It's a song somebody wrote. And while it's not copyright infringement for an AI to come up with something that sounds remarkably similar to something else but doesn't actually copy it note for note in a song or word for word in a book, it still diminishes that original author's uniqueness, their ability to continue to make money and provide their own revenue through their intellectual property. Right, so there's a balance that we have to come out here with. The model open framework, its highest classification is this open science, and the thing that most people have an issue with is it says data sets, any licensed or unlicensed. So you have to identify the data that was used to create your model, but you might have to, if somebody wants to reproduce it, they might have to pay royalties for that data to be able to use that same data set to create something that is identical. I think that's fair. I think that's reasonable. Again, there are others certainly at this event that disagree with me. But this is a battle that's raging on, and as I was watching that Amy Webb presentation this morning, we're taking 3 years to figure out what we want to call open source AI. And if you watch that video, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's coming down the pike, and we're not keeping pace. You know, we're not keeping pace in what we think is or is not open source, and so the regulators that are trying to come on behind us and figure this out, they don't have a foundation from which to start to build regulations either. So we have to get faster. Then finally, in conclusion, so conventional software, it's the other difference between conventional software and artificial intelligence. Conventional software is a deterministic system where we know where the intellectual property comes from, and we know what is being given away and who gave it away, and they did it on purpose, right? Data in AI is intellectual property owned by somebody else, usually many others, and requiring all data to be open, I can't see as being fair or realistic. And without all that data, it is impossible to adequately study a probabilistic AI system, but you can refine it from there going forward. So foundational models that are open weights, they aren't perfect, and it would be really good if you could regenerate, but that doesn't mean that they are of no value. They are of a diminished value, but as I've tried to show in this talk, we got a lot of different things in the open source ecosystem that is of diminished value, but is still of value. And that's really all I wanted to say. I probably ran over time anyway, I did. So, there you go. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Phil. Are there any questions for Phil? We still have time for 1 or 2 questions if you like. No? All right. Thanks a lot for the closing talk, Phil. It's really informative and insightful as well. Hi, everyone. This is also the ending of day 2 of FOSSASIA Summit 2025. We hopefully today you already have a chance to get to know a lot of new people. You learn a lot of new things, and then you have a chance to connect with our speaker after the presentation as well. We will hopefully you guys will have a wonderful night today, and we'll see you again in tomorrow for the last day of FOSSASIA Summit 2025. Thanks a lot, everyone.